Imagine you're standing inside a villa just outside Rome. The year is 73 after Christ. You're 15 years old. Yesterday you met a man for the first time. Today you married him. He's a centurion. Your father arranged the match. You were never asked if you agreed. The ceremony followed every rule. The sacrifice, the vows, the procession through the streets. Everyone congratulated your father on a successful alliance. Men clapped your new husband on the back and joked about his luck. No one asked how you felt. Now the feast is over. The wine has flowed freely. The guests are loud and unsteady on their feet. Your husband takes your hand. His grip is firm, possessive. He leads you away from the crowd. You walk toward his quarters. Your heart is racing. Your stomach feels hollow. You're terrified. But you tell yourself the same thing every girl is taught to believe. It will be over quickly. You reach the door. He opens it. You step inside. And you see them. 5 men, sitting on benches, drinking wine, smiling. They aren't leaving. This is the part most people don't understand about Roman marriage. The wedding night wasn't private. It wasn't gentle. And it wasn't really about the couple at all. It was a public demonstration, a political act, a ritual designed to establish dominance and control. This wasn't deviance. It wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. This was standard practice. It was written into marriage customs, defended in legal texts, recorded by Roman historians and poets without hesitation or shame. Let me show you exactly what happened in that room. If you believe that the darkest systems of power in history must be remembered, consider liking this video and subscribing. Your support helps uncover more accounts buried in the shadows of ancient empires. The ritual had a name. Romans called it deductio in domum mariti, the leading of the bride into the husband's house. It sounds simple. It wasn't. After the ceremony, the bride was escorted through the streets in a procession. Family members, friends, witnesses. If the groom was a soldier, the procession was deliberately loud. Crude songs were sung, sexual jokes were shouted, encouragement was hurled toward the groom. The bride's fear wasn't ignored. It was mocked. You were expected to cry. If you didn't, people noticed. A dry-eyed bride raised questions. Questions about virginity, questions about shame. If you didn't cry, it suggested you'd done this before. That your body wasn't untouched, that your family had failed. So you cry. Not only because you're afraid, but because fear is part of the performance. Your tears are required. The procession reaches the house. You're led inside. You assume the witnesses will leave. They don't. In military marriages, especially among centurions and lower-ranking officers, the custom was explicit. The groom's comrades entered the bedchamber. They sat down. They drank. They stayed. Not outside the door. Not listening from the hallway. Inside the room. Roman writers describe this plainly. Catullus, writing in the 1st century before Christ, refers to wedding night witnesses in his poems. He presents it as normal, expected, traditional. Martial, writing in the 1st century after Christ, makes jokes about it in his epigrams. He assumes his audience already knows. He assumes they'll laugh. Plutarch, in his writings on Roman customs, notes that military marriages often included fraternal witnesses to ensure the union was properly consummated. Properly consummated. Think about what that means. These men had a role, a purpose. They weren't just present. They were verifying, judging, ensuring that the bride performed correctly. Now imagine it from her perspective. You're 15. You've never experienced anything like this. You don't understand what's about to happen. And there are 5 grown men watching you. Men who serve beside your husband. Men bound to him by loyalty and hierarchy. Men who see you as property transferred from one household to another. You can't refuse. You can't ask them to leave. Your husband invited them. Tradition demands it. To object would insult his honor, and his honor matters more than your body. So it happens in front of them. They watch. They comment. They laugh. Roman wedding poetry includes lines where witnesses joke during consummation. They critique the bride's reactions. They encourage the groom. Your trauma becomes their entertainment, their bonding ritual. Why would a society normalize this? Here's the part that should truly unsettle you about Roman culture. Everything served the state. Every ritual, every custom, every law. Marriage wasn't about love. It was about producing legitimate children. Children who would become citizens. Citizens who would serve the empire. The wedding night ritual served multiple purposes. First, it verified virginity. If the bride cried, struggled, bled, it was taken as proof. If she didn't, suspicion followed. Second, it established dominance. The husband's first act as a married man was to assert physical control in front of his peers. That moment defined the marriage. Third, it bonded the men. Shared witnessing of violation created complicity. They were now invested. They had seen her submission. They had participated in her breaking. This wasn't intimacy. It was systematic control, and the evidence is clear. The Digest of Justinian, a compilation of Roman legal texts, includes sections referencing consummation verification. The law allowed witnesses to testify in annulment cases about whether consummation occurred. How would they know? Because they were there. Marriage contracts from the 1st and 2nd centuries, preserved in papyri from Roman Egypt, sometimes include clauses specifying who would verify consummation. Names were listed, roles were defined, and if verification failed, consequences followed. A contract dated to 142 after Christ, found in Oxyrhynchus, required 2 witnesses to confirm consummation on the wedding night. They had to sign a statement. That statement became part of the legal marriage record. Your most intimate moment. Your most terrifying night. Reduced to ink on papyrus. Signed by the men who watched. And this system destroyed lives. In the next part, I'll show you exactly how. There's a case that shows exactly what this system did to real people. Her name was Cornelia of Ostia. The year was 86 after Christ. We know about her because her husband filed for divorce just 2 months after their marriage. His name was Gaius Flavius. He was a junior military officer. His claim was simple. Cornelia, he said, was not a virgin on their wedding night. To prove it, he presented testimony. 3 witnesses, all fellow soldiers. They had been in the room. The legal fragment survives. One witness stated that Cornelia showed no pain and did not bleed. Another claimed she moved with familiarity rather than modesty. Based on that testimony, the marriage was annulled. Cornelia's dowry was seized. Her reputation was destroyed. Her family was publicly shamed. She was 16 years old. No one questioned why 3 grown men were present in the chamber. No one asked whether their testimony might be biased. No one considered that Cornelia might have been too terrified to react normally, too shocked to cry, too tense to bleed. The men's word was absolute. Cornelia's experience didn't matter. The fragment is housed today in the Bodleian Library at Oxford. The handwriting is neat. The judgment is final. After the annulment, Cornelia disappears from the historical record. We don't know what happened to her. But we know what happened to Gaius Flavius. He remarried within a year. His second wife was 14. Rome conducted hundreds of thousands of marriages over the Republic and Empire. Not all followed identical rituals. There were regional variations. Class differences mattered. But the core structure appears again and again. Consummation witnessed, verified, recorded. Military marriages were the most extreme. Soldiers lived communally. Privacy barely existed. Barracks were shared spaces. A centurion's quarters might offer slightly more room, but not true isolation. The expectation of shared experience followed the soldier home. When a man married, his unit attended. They escorted the bride. They entered the quarters. They stayed. Military records don't describe this in detail, but personal letters do. We have correspondence from soldiers stationed in Britain, Germany, and Syria, men writing casually to brothers and friends. One letter, dated around 110 after Christ, was written by a soldier named Marcus. He describes attending a comrade's wedding. He jokes about staying in the room because tradition demands it. He jokes about the bride's tears. He thinks he's being humorous, friendly. He doesn't realize he's describing trauma. That's how normalized it was. Men participated in violating women and believed they were honoring tradition. Eventually, the witnesses left. The room fell quiet. For the first time, you were alone with your husband. You were bleeding. You were in pain. You were traumatized. There was no pause, no space to recover, because the ritual wasn't over. The next morning, it continued. In many Roman marriages, the day after the wedding night included a ceremony known as the pronuba sacrifice. The couple made an offering at the household shrine. Family members were present. Questions were asked. The purpose was simple: to confirm the marriage had been successfully consummated. Your demeanor was watched closely. Too calm was suspicious. Too distressed was also suspicious. You were expected to display the correct amount of suffering. Older married women, matrons, sometimes examined you. Not a formal medical inspection like later medieval practices. But they looked. They asked pointed questions. They checked clothing for blood if they could. Your body was evidence. Your pain was proof. If the matrons reported anything unusual, your husband could petition for annulment. The witnesses from the night before would be summoned. Their testimony would decide your future. You had no voice, no defense. Roman law made this explicit. In the Digest of Justinian, Book 23, Title 2 covers marriage dissolution. One section discusses annulment based on non-consummation. If a marriage wasn't consummated due to the wife's unwillingness or physical inability, the husband could dissolve it. How was unwillingness determined? Witness testimony. How was physical inability proven? Medical examination ordered by the husband. The law handed men every possible tool. Women were given none. Roman women had no legal personhood. They lived under the manus of their father, then their husband. Their bodies belonged to the family. Their suffering was irrelevant. This wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the foundation of it. Think about what this does to a society. When half the population is systematically traumatized, when intimate violence is legalized, when witnesses to violation are validated and rewarded, you create a culture where domination feels normal, where suffering is expected, where power goes unquestioned. Rome didn't merely allow this. Rome required it. Law enforced it. Custom reinforced it. Literature celebrated it. Ovid's Art of Love, written around 1 before Christ, offers advice to grooms. He tells them to take what is theirs on the wedding night. He advises ignoring the bride's tears. He claims she wants it, but pretends not to. That's rape apology written by one of Rome's most celebrated poets. And it was considered romantic, educational, normal. Violence wasn't hidden in Roman culture. It was woven into its ideals. There's one case that shows the most extreme version of this system. The year was 121 after Christ. A tribune named Quintus married the daughter of a senator. Her name was Julia Secunda. She was 14. He was 35. The wedding was enormous. Hundreds of guests. Politicians, military officers, Rome's elite. The wedding night included not only military witnesses, but political ones. 12 men, 2 fellow tribunes, several senators. They didn't stay for the entire act. They stayed long enough to verify that it began. Long enough to humiliate her. We know this because one of the witnesses mentioned it years later in private correspondence. His name was Cornelius Tacitus, possibly the same Tacitus who would become Rome's most famous historian. He expressed discomfort with the practice. He questioned whether it was necessary. But he stayed. He watched. His discomfort didn't stop him. It never stopped any of them. Julia Secunda remained in that marriage for 12 years. She had 4 children. She fulfilled her duty. Then she died, giving birth to the 5th. She was 26 years old. Nearly half her life had been spent pregnant or recovering from childbirth. Her wedding night had been witnessed by some of the most powerful men in Rome. Her pain produced citizens. That was all that mattered. The correspondence mentioning her survives in the Vatican Library archives. Fragmentary, but real. Julia existed. Her trauma was real, and Rome considered it proper. In the final part, we're going to confront what this means for how we understand Rome itself. Here's what haunts me most about Roman marriage. The system didn't hide itself. The laws were public. The customs were celebrated. The poets wrote about it openly, and they were proud. They believed this proved Roman virtue, Roman strength, Roman order. The ability to systematically violate women wasn't seen as cruelty. It was seen as civilization. That's the danger of institutionalized violence. Once it's systematized, it becomes invisible. People stop questioning it. It becomes tradition, and tradition becomes sacred. Rome ran this machine for centuries, over 1,000 years, if you include the Byzantine continuation. Millions of women passed through it. Millions of wedding nights. Millions of witnesses. How many Cornelias? How many Julias? The records rarely name them. They record the men, the contracts, the legal disputes. Women appear only as footnotes. Their suffering becomes background context. Their trauma is mentioned only when it causes a legal inconvenience. We don't have their voices. What we have are descriptions of their pain written by the men who caused it. That's what survived. But sometimes, rarely, a woman's voice breaks through the silence. Near Hadrian's Wall, in the Vindolanda tablets, there's a letter from the 2nd century after Christ. A woman named Claudia Severa writes to her friend Sulpicia Lepidina. She mentions her wedding day. She doesn't describe what happened. She doesn't need to. She writes, "I cannot speak of it even now. You will understand when your time comes. Prepare your heart. Prepare your heart. Not prepare yourself. Prepare your heart for breaking." That's all she could say. That's all she was allowed to say. But it tells you everything. There's another fragment from Roman Egypt, dated to the 3rd century. A marriage contract. In the bride's section, there's a line written in a different hand, possibly hers. "I agree to all that is required, though I wish it were otherwise." 5 words, buried inside legal language. An entire life of suffering compressed into a single sentence. She agreed, but she wished it were otherwise. That's as close to refusal as she could get. These fragments survived by accident, preserved in dry Egyptian sand, preserved in military archives at the edges of the empire. Most women's words are gone, lost, erased. But these few whispers remain, and they tell us the women knew. They understood what was being done to them. They simply had no power to stop it. Here's the question that should keep you awake tonight. Rome is often called the foundation of Western civilization. Roman law, Roman government, Roman culture. We study it in schools. We admire its engineering. We analyze its literature. We call it sophisticated. But this was Rome, too. This systematic violation wasn't a flaw in the system. It was part of its sophistication. This trauma machine was built directly into Roman law. So when we celebrate Rome, what exactly are we celebrating? What does civilized really mean? The aqueducts were built by slaves. The roads were maintained by conquered peoples. The empire expanded through genocide. And the families that ruled it were founded on wedding nights like Julia's, like Cornelia's, like countless unnamed girls whose suffering sustained the system. This isn't distant ancient history. This is the foundation we're still standing on. Roman law shaped medieval law. Medieval law shaped modern law. Marriage customs changed, rituals softened, but the underlying structure remained. Women as property, men as owners. In some places, it still remains. The witnesses eventually stopped standing in the room. Explicit verification faded, but the assumption never fully disappeared. The idea that women's bodies belong to systems of power simply became quieter, more subtle, more deniable. The blueprint survived, and the pattern remains. Until we confront where it began, we can't dismantle where it leads. That's why this history matters. Not because Rome is shocking, but because Rome is foundational. The violence wasn't an aberration. It was the structure. And the structure is still with us. If this exposed something you'd never heard before, subscribe and turn on notifications. We're going to keep uncovering the history they tried to bury. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next investigation.